Well. Good morning, West Ham fans. Russ, the West Ham Network. Hope you are all safe and well. So on Monday, we did the Academy show, 6 p.m. every Monday. Probably won't do it during the international break as much, but we'll be back following, not next Monday, the Monday after. And we did a sort of player profile, a player sort of deep dive into 𝗧𝗛𝗘 𝗡𝗘𝗫𝗧, my boy, the under-21 captain, just turned 18, just signed a new 5-year +1 deal, and was on the bench for the Burnley game. And people really enjoyed that. And in the comments, they were like, what about Kante? What about 𝗧𝗛𝗏 𝗔𝗖𝗔𝗗𝗘𝗠𝗬? So we thought, you know what? Rather than wait, let's give it to you now. You asked for it, you got it. Statman Ben has been scouring the under-21 pages, re-watching all the games, putting all the stats in, and talking about sort of what I call the next gen players, which, you know, and for this, we're just going to be concentrating on Mohamedou Kante and 𝗧𝗛𝗏 𝗔𝗖𝗔𝗗𝗘. Now, obviously, Kante we've spoken about already this week. There's a lot of talk about him in terms of a number, if not practically every championship club has apparently been in contact with West Ham about him joining. Some places say permanently, but it's not going to be permanent. But a loan deal could, I think, benefit Mohamedou particularly. So let's get into it and let's talk about Mo. So, bit of a player profile. He's 20 years old. For anyone interested, his birthday is 5 days before my birthday. Hashtag just saying. French, born in Paris, central midfielder, right-footed. Obviously, currently at West Ham, but his previous youth football, particularly coming through the ranks, was at Paris FC. In terms of his timeline, let's make that a bit bigger so you can see. He joined Paris FC Academy, aged just 15. Played for the 17s and 19s at the age of 16. Played for Paris FC B-side, which is in essence sort of the 21s in Nation 3, which was at the age of 17. 2024, West Ham signed him. 𝗕𝗥𝗘𝗫𝗧 signing, and was immediately loaned back to Paris FC, aged 18. Didn't play a lot, obviously. We kept an eye on him in terms of his Paris FC. They were currently in Ligue 2 at the time. And started to make some appearances towards the end, particularly when like Paris FC were already sort of promoted as a substitute. He only played 59 minutes in total. He came back in August, and when he came back in August, he was then sort of given a bit of playing time in terms of the pre-season squads and things like that. He's obviously now very much integrated within the 21 squad. He trains with the West Ham first team, as we know. Himself, 𝗧𝗛𝗏, and Finn were all training with the first team last week, and still involved in first team training, and will continue to be so. I think in terms of the strategy for what Nuno's doing with some of these younger players, or these 4 younger players, particularly Finn, him, Ezra, and 𝗧𝗛𝗏. It's almost like they're training with the first team and then releasing them to play in the 21s if they're not going to be called up to the first team squad. So, 2 weeks ago for the Newcastle game, Ezra was on the bench. Then Ezra played on the Friday for the 21s, and 𝗧𝗛𝗏 wasn't playing because he was on the bench. So I think those two will be, particularly while Mavropanos was out injured. We assume he'll be back after the international break. So they might get less time on the bench, but who knows with Nuno? Because because he does seem to want to give youth a chance, which is great to see. In terms of his stat profile, let's go full screen with this. We've introduced a 5-star system in terms of key tactical profiles for the position that they'll be playing in. So Kante is a very different tactical profile to 𝗧𝗛𝗏, for example. We'll talk about in a minute. Press resistance, 5 stars, consistently escapes pressure in central areas, and the key trait in West Ham's build-up. This is looking through how he's been playing for the 21 squad. Ball control, good first touch, close control, especially in tight midfield zones. I think Ben's been a bit generous there. I'd give him 3.5. I think sometimes he does lose the ball a little bit. In terms of passing vision, spots vertical lanes and switches planes well, developing range with both feet. Very agile for a big lad, but very agile anyway. Has a quick turn of acceleration, helps evade markers and recover defensively. Got a great turn of pace, and obviously long legs as well, so it doesn't take a lot to get him going. Tactical flexibility. Can play as a 6, an 8, or a hybrid role and adapts to different situations and instructions. Composure. Rarely panics under pressure. Maintains decision-making clarity in transitions. And work ethic. He's been praised by coaches for his attitude and training intensively and earned first-team call-ups. And indeed, in terms of call-up within the training squad, as we said. But what's good to see is, he's, and talking to Kenny and stuff about him, it's quite funny when we all sit there watching the 21s and you see him going to tackles and everyone around us just laughs because he's so physically head and shoulders above everyone, which is a rare trait to have for a 21 player, under 21 player. Usually they're a little bit lightweight, thinking the likes of 𝗔𝗘𝗫𝗧, the likes of maybe Ollie at sometimes, the likes of Callum, a little bit lean, slightly. They need a good meal. They get in the gym just to bulk up a little bit more, just so they're not pushed around so much. Kante's the one who pushes them all around. And, when he's been playing in the Virtua Trophy, playing against men in midfield, he's equally physically dominating. Liken him to maybe like a Yaya Toure and Patrick Vieira type player. That's how good he is. But he can play. Which is great to see. He's not just a lump. He can play. Where does he fit tactically? In terms of his tactical fit, few areas in a 4-3-3 or 4-2-3-1, he can play as a number 6, orchestrating the build-up, receiving under pressure, recycling play, bringing the ball forward. In a 4-3-3, he can play as an 8, links defensive to attack, supports both phases. In a 4-2-3-1 or a diamond 4-4-2, left-sided centre mid in double pivot, and it will allow you to balance, progress and cover, and support sort of wide loads, a bit like me. And then in a 3-2-5 formation, inverted centre midfield, tucks inside the support, build up and press resistance. He would scare me. He would scare me looking, if he was running at me and I had the ball, putting under pressure. He is a big, big lad. If you see the picture of when he signed originally, he is head and shoulders above Kenny Brown, and Kenny's standing up. He's very tall. In terms of sort of ideal match scenarios, we picked sort of 3. One is versus a very high pressing team, because he's got that press resistance and he's got composure. It allows him to escape pressure and retain possession, helping his team bypass the press and build calmly. If you see him in terms of his under 21, when he's playing in under 21s, he's very skillful. He's got good feet for a big man, but he's got good feet anyway, regardless if he's a big man or not. And if you saw his goal against Liverpool, shows that he's got in his locker either feet, and that was it was his bad foot. He curled that ball in. In terms of versus the deep block, got good passing vision and ability to operate in tight spaces, which helps unlock compact defences, especially when recycling play and switching flanks. And in terms of that transitional midfield battle, his agility and tactical awareness allow him to recover quickly, link phases, and control chaotic midfield instructions and exchanges, rather. And that's a real key thing, I think. When, despite being physically dominating, he's quite a calming presence. Maybe he's got one of these, certain players have it where you almost, it seems the game slows down when he's got the ball at his feet. There's a few players like that in the West Ham sort of academy. I say him, Preston, and to a lesser extent Lewis. Obviously, he's not in, but when he's got the ball, everything just slows down. Erdrich is the same. Doesn't seem to panic. It's almost like he's got, what was it, Harold's watch or Henry's watch, where he used to slow down time, the old TV program. That's what it's like when he's really strange. But if you watch him play, everything slows down to his pace. Which is great to see. How does he compare against his seniors? Let's have a look. Let's go full screen. In terms of pass completion rate, much better than Thomas Souček and better than JWP. In terms of progressive carries, he's bringing the ball through more. We didn't bother comparing him to the likes of Fernandez and Potts because actually I think he would complement those two rather than necessarily be competitive against them. For me, he's competing for someone like 𝗧𝗛𝗘, really. Interceptions, very similar to 𝗧𝗛𝗘's. Tackles success, and again, these are from 21 scores, but 65%. Progressive passes, a lot more than, well, 2 more roughly than 𝗧𝗛𝗘. Assists, obviously, he's only hasn't been around as long as 𝗧𝗛𝗘 or James Ward-Prowse, but you can see in terms of the where we are now, that pass completion rate is so crucial now for that sort of midfielder role. So what does he offer? Well, ball retention, firstly. Rarely loses possession, ideal for maintaining control in tight midfield setups. Short space creativity, combines well in congested areas, enabling quick 1-2s. Loves a 1-2 and overloads near the box. Makes smart decisions in terms of low-risk decisions under pressure. Valuable in, obviously, high-stakes Premier League games, let alone PL2 games, obviously. You can get away with it, but obviously making mistakes in actual Premier League 1 matches is not something you want to do. Squad balance. He offers a technical contrast to more physical midfielders like 𝗧𝗛𝗘 and 𝗔𝗘𝗫. Just, 𝗔𝗘𝗫 not very physical, but different to our first team midfielders. Injects tempo and urgency. And you can see if he'd come off the bench, that's what he would do, especially in late game scenarios. And in terms of youthful energy, injecting that tempo and urgency when coming off the bench, especially in, again, late game scenarios. So how, and again, Statman Ben puts almost like a score. So at the moment, he's got a 68% chance as we stand of breaking into the first team. Obviously, this is subjective, but we plumb all our things into the supercomputer and get where someone, I think Ēdris is about 78%. Kārntē at the moment is about 68%. Already trained with the first team squad. That's a high weight. Midfield depth and rotation needs. We've obviously got a lot. We've got Magassa, we've got Potts, we've got Fernandez, we've got at the moment Ward-Prowse, 𝗧𝗛𝗘 and Irving. This may change. Come. I spoke yesterday in the jam. In terms of Hammers. Oh, where have we gone? There we go. Oh, let's go full swing. When I spoke in Hammers headlines, yesterday, 𝗔𝗘𝗫 could be going to Everton. Guerrero Rodriguez, Andy Irving, very much look like they're on the off as well. Straight away, then that puts Kārntē back in the picture. So at the moment, he's got a few ahead of him, but that's not saying that's not going to change in the next few months. In terms of technical profile fits, very, very sort of high press resistance, composure, suits Nuno's possession-based style. Senior match experience hasn't got a lot, obviously, only 6 league games, where someone like Freddie Potts has over 100 league games under his belt, albeit in the lower divisions, Championship and League One. So that's why, for me, a loan spell could benefit Kārntē and getting that sort of first team match experience, particularly British first team match experience. Championship interest, external interest could lead to a loan exit, meaning reducing immediate squad chances. As we said, pretty much most Championship sides are after him. Statistical readiness, strong per 90 stats, but small sample size, obviously, because we're just taking it from the 21s. And in terms of development trajectory, good word, rise from Paris FC B side to the under 21 to the first team within 18 months, first team training. That is not bad at all. That is not shabby Alonso at all. So that's how Mr. Kārntē shapes up. Let's talk about Josh Ādžala. Again, another player who's getting a lot of interest. Scored. He was obviously injured for a lot of this first season so far in terms of the PL2. Scored the other day and has got himself in the onion. Scored the old onion bag a couple of times now recently since coming back from injury. A lot of interest about him, particularly in our chat. So let's talk about him in a bit more detail, shall we? Do the same thing there. In terms of Josh, he turned, it was his birthday yesterday. Happy birthday, Josh. What's that? 19? 18? Anyway, what is it? How old was he yesterday? Should have probably done this before I started, to be honest, but hey-ho. Get my calculator. This is when you know you get old, because I don't know how old I am. I have to sort of put in the year and put my birth date in. 19, so just turned 19. English, but also can play for Nigeria as well. Born in London, right-footed. He was Chigwell boys and went to Chelsea, and then was dumped by Chelsea. West Ham under 21. West Ham took him on. Went to 20. He's playing 21 level. Positions. He's got sort of three kind of. He's a forward, so it's either centre forward, left forward, or second striker. He sort of plays. In terms of his journey, I'll go full screen, but I'll walk you through his sort of academy journey. As I said, played Chigwell boys. Then was Chelsea schoolboys, and then was got rid of when he was 15. Signed for West Ham Academy. Scored 19 goals for the under-18s in the 22-23 season, despite only being like 16 or so. Helped the team finish second in the under-18s Premier League South. Won the Premier League Cup Golden Boot, scoring twice in the final as West Ham under-18s lifted the trophy. Began transition to the under-21s level with appearances in PL2 and the EFL Trophy. And last season became a regular starter for the under-21s. Scored 8 goals in the PL2 and 3 in the National Cup. Featured in the National Cup against senior opposition, obviously now as well. Was injured and has recently come back into the fold now. So he's back, so to speak. In terms of his tactical profile, he's quick off the line, breaks with pace, very, very quick. Finishing, really clinical strike. You see some of his goals. He knows where the goal is, and he knows how to get it. Off the ball movement, times he runs well, although sometimes I think he does drift offside quite a bit. But because he's so close to the line. Link up play, needs refinement under pressure. He loses the ball a little bit. He's a little bit lightweight for me at the moment. Josh, he needs to put a little bit down the gym. You have to be fat. I'm not saying being fat, but a little bit stronger up top, particularly to hold off defenders. Defensive work rate. He does love a sliding tackle from behind, so he does get a few bookings, and he is a little bit hot-headed. If someone clips his heels, he'll go after him, which I don't mind, but it's doing it in a controlled manner. Physicality, developing strength for senior duels. Decision-making, occasionally over-dribbling and rushing the final ball. I think that's a fair assessment. He's not the finished article at all, but he's well on the way to being. In terms of his tactical fit, at a 4-2-3-1, he could play as a lone striker. Best fit for counter-attacking setups. In the 4-3-3, definitely more of a wide forward, suited to an inverted sort of winger role. In the 4-3-3, more of a central threat, effective with support runners. And I think, Josh's key is when he's running at the defenders, not with his back to the defence. He needs to be running, full steam ahead and balls over the top. When he does break the line, he's got such a nice turn of pace in him that he will get himself away very, very quickly from a defender. He'll always have a couple of yards in him. In terms of his ideal match scenario, so transitioning heavy gains versus high lines. You've got fixtures with space to exploit at the moment. That's one of his where he works best. And in terms of a senior setup, it could be that late impact sub. I wouldn't be surprised potentially if we have a decent, maybe an easier cut run for a couple of rounds, you might see him on the bench possibly. Although personally, in my opinion, I think Josh Landers is actually more likely to make minutes than Josh 𝗧𝗏, in my humble opinion. But that's just me. There will be a Josh, but it might be Landers rather than 𝗧𝗏. In terms of comparing, let's go full screen again. In terms of comparing to his senior people, goal-wise, obviously scored more goals than all three combined, obviously being in the under-21s. Assists, 2. And in terms of estimated stats, because we obviously can't pull all the stats in because the away games particularly, but a decent number of shots, decent, pass completion, decent dribble success. That's where I think he lets himself down a little bit, in all honesty. I think, again, over-dribbling sometimes. And getting, people know, it's no surprise. People know he's a good finisher, so people will keep tight to him, and he sometimes gets doubled up. But I think, again, we've got a lot of depth in our first team, so finding where he'd fit in, maybe more akin to maybe that left-hand side if they're playing a 3 behind the striker, possibly. But then you've got Guilherme in front of him and Somerville in front of him, and potential of playing Diouf maybe there and playing Ollie Scars behind as a left back. I think it's going to be a little bit tough for Josh to break in. It might be another, get some loan spells, particularly with strikers. If they start banging in goals, it gets back quite quickly to the hierarchy if we got a goal scored. Do you remember Jermaine Defoe he went on loan to Bournemouth and absolutely tore him a new one, didn't he? Did he get the record? Most consecutive first goal games scored in or something like that? It was Pele's record, wasn't it? Something like that. In terms of what he offers, right, as I said, there's a lot. There's a lot he can offer, I think. In terms of the vertical threat in transition, he's scored 8 goals last season. He's got about 6 now. Most coming from direct runs behind the defence. We know Nuno's teams like quick transitions, and Jdžála's acceleration timing would make him an ideal one for exploiting when West Ham sit deep and counter, albeit sometimes he just needs to check his run a little bit more for me. In terms of clinical finishing, that there is no doubt that is where his strength is. He's netted 19 goals in his debut season for the under-18s and won the Premier League Cup Golden Boot, including scoring a brace in the final. His composure in the box mirrors the instinct of a poacher, valuable for breaking low blocks, where West Ham often struggle to convert territory into actual goals. Early maturity and positional intelligence. Obviously, he was promoted to the under-21s at a younger age. He scored 8 goals last season for the PL2, despite still being a scholar. His early adaptation to under-21 football suggests he can handle cameo roles in domestic cups or late game substitutions without disrupting tactical shape. In terms of tactical flexibility across the front line, can be as a forward, left winger, a second striker. Obviously, Nuno often rotates his front line in the 3-4-3, 4-2-3-1, and someone like Jdžála's adaptability would really benefit West Ham and allow him to slot into multiple places, depending on how the game's going or the opposition, what they're doing. Having someone like him could be very, very valuable in a first-team squad in terms of being able to be adaptable. And in terms of big game temperament, he has scored twice in the Premier League Cup final and regularly scores in the knockout stages. He in that small sample, he's handled pressure and executed key moments. And as I said, that could be useful for maybe cup ties, that type of thing, bringing him on when we need a goal, when we need a bit of pace up front. Would definitely be a good option, that's for sure. I think he's got a lot of things going for him. In terms of his breaking into the first team, again, we've applied this, and again, it's very much it's not a like for like. It's based on their position and looking at a number of key factors. So only 45% this season, obviously. There's a decent output for goals and assists, which is a high. In terms of the attacking form, medium. Bowen's obviously very productive. Wilson, a little bit. Fulcru's underperforming, likely to be leaving in January. They could open up a window potentially. Squad depth in forward roles. We've got about 4 or 5 senior forwards, so injuries or rotation could create space. You've got Marshall ahead of him. You've got the likes of Crescencio Somerville. At the moment, you've got Luis Guilherme. You've got Bowen. You've got Wilson. You've got Fulkrug at the moment. That may change in January, but at the moment, he's got quite a few ahead of him. In terms of managerial philosophy, Nuno prefers experienced players and physical profiles. It's the physicality I slightly worry when Jdžála. He likes quite physical forwards, and I just don't think Josh is there yet. Not saying he can't be. That's why, for me, I think Josh Landers offers a little bit more because he's quite a unit already, and enjoys battering centre halves basically. His physical readiness still developing, may struggle with Premier League duels. I don't think necessarily the pace, but the duels. Injury situation, it's a medium, although he has just come back from injury. But, looking ahead, Wilson can get injured for his limited minutes in his legs. Bowen plays heavy load. One injury could open up the door. And the managerial philosophy, we put a variable for that. FA Cup could offer minutes if West Ham progress, but also if West Ham get a decent tie. If we're playing, you know, a lower League 2 side or whatever, then you may well see the likes of Josh maybe get some minutes. But anyway, let me know what you think. If there's anyone else you'd like us to profile, we'll keep Ben busy. Let us know. We might delve into some more of the... Ben's done a little bit of work at looking at some of the players who've been linked with and looking at their potential in terms of working within a West Ham side. So keep an eye on that. Maybe do it. Might have the weekend, maybe. Until next time, my friends, take care, stay safe, stay warm, stay humble, keep the faith. Give us a like as well and a share and a hype. Hype for the Academy. Much love. Bye-bye.